I am Dr. Sanjib Pattnaik. I will be elaborating on our particular topic of discussion today, that is investor grievances and dispute resolution. We are into a course, or the subject that we are learning is titled as equity markets and has been coded as MMPF 007. Now, we have entered into block 3 where we are looking at secondary markets. When we say the capital market or the equity markets, uh, we segregate the market into two types. The first type is the primary market, or in general, where securities for the first time or new securities of the existing companies are floated. That means first time also. So anything that is coming to the marketplace for the first time, we call them the marketplace as the primary market. Now, after coming as a fresh issue or new issue into the primary market, investor invest in those kind of securities and they get their money invested if they are interested in certain particular securities. Now, after holding the securities, sometimes what happens, need due to various factors, maybe due to profit motive, maybe due to meeting the requirements of the family, like marriage of the children's, educational purpose of children, etc., etc. Or for purposes like emergency requirement, they would like to liquidate their investment. When I say liquidate or liquidation, it is nothing but selling of the equity share and in turn getting back the cash. Now, the question is, where shall they sell off the equity share? Now, the answer comes from the second portion of the market, or the second constituent of the market, that is the secondary market. Suppose I am holding 100 numbers of securities of a company but named as X Limited. I have gone for the initial public offering of X Company Limited and have purchased or have got 100 equity shares. At that time, suppose the equity shares were offered to me, or I have purchased it at rupees 200 each. So my total investment is 20,000 rupees. Now, after a few days, I find that the equity share prices have gone upwards and the X Company Limited share prices have reached a astonishing figure of 500 rupees. I had purchased at 200 rupees. Now it is selling in the marketplace at 500 rupees. That means my investment value has grown from rupees 20,000 to the present value of the equity share in the marketplace at 1 lakh rupees. Further, by looking at various kind of informations, I come to know that the prices of those equity shares, that means the X Company Limited, will not rise further. It will come down, or the company will face trouble in the future. So this kind of information, when it spreads across the market, every investor will become apprehensive and will try to sell their shares. Now, when the selling the shares more in numbers come into the picture, that means the supply side becomes higher, thereby bringing down the share prices. So now what I do, I take the equity shares and try to sell off in the marketplace. Now this can be done through a trading member or the broker. My broker will sell the security X company's securities at a given order in the secondary market. So I will be receiving rupees 1 lakh for that, and I can deduct the expenses of the broker. Suppose I will be getting back 90,000 rupees. So my investment of 20,000 within 6 months has grown to 90,000 rupees, and I am liquidating now. Here, if I do not get the money in time, that means we know that the settlement has to be done within T plus 1 days. Settlement means the buyer of the securities that I am holding will pay me back in form of cash or into the bank account. So if I have not got my money back in time, then some kind of grievance will come into my mind that I have sold up the equity share in anticipation that I can meet my requirements in time. Now, this kind of grievance, who is there to listen? Who will handle these grievances? I, as an investor, have a certain grievance. Where shall I complain? Whom shall I complain? And how my complaints will be taken care of. So, our particular topic of discussion today is the Unit 8 of our Block 3, that is secondary market, investor grievances and dispute resolution. So, whatever are the grievances of the investor, how it is handled by the regulatory authorities, and if there is any kind of disputes, how it is resolved as quickly as possible, so that the integrity of the market and investors' faith on the market and fair practices of the market holds good. Now, taking into account the investor grievances, where from the grievances came mostly. Now, investors were taken for a ride. When I'm saying taken for a ride means they were duped, they were cheated, they were taken into false assurance, false promises, etc. from the 1990s. That means after the reforms of 1990s, when the stock market became a place for every general investor, they could think of investing in the stock market, or they could play with the secondary market. Many scams came forward. People were taking advantage of the innocence of the investors. When we are talking of scams, some of the scams were tea plantation. Many a times we or our parents or those who were there in the 1990s, there many companies came forward with a false promise or assurance that you invest your money in our company, we will try to double it within 3-4 times, or this money will be invested in planting teak trees, which will give you returns on the invested amount at a exponential value. That means returns are abnormally higher as compared to the market returns. Now, why people were taken for a ride in teak plantation companies? Because in India, teak is such a wooden product, which is aspired by everybody in the Indian market. The prices of teak is very high and it is growing also at a astronomical rate. So people, they invested their money in these teak plantation companies, and what ultimately happened? These companies vanished completely from the scenarios due to lack of tight regulation, and the investors' money were gone. Similarly, we have many cases of Nidhi and cheat funds. Till now, also, we find many investors are yet to receive their investment amount from the cheat funds where they have invested during 1990s or 95s or 2000s. These cheat funds, similarly like teak plantation, duped the investors out of their hard-earned money in false by giving false promise that will be giving you returns which were very high, 2 to 3 times, or within 2 3 times, your 2 3 years, your return will be doubled, which was abnormally high as compared to the market returns. Now, these cheat funds, even though some have been trapped by enforcement legal authorities of the state of the state, but still investors are yet to get back their money. Another way of having the market scam was price rigging of IPOs by promoters of vanishing companies. Now, companies looking at the increasing interest of investors during 1990s were ready to invest in the stock market due to lacks of security, due to lacks of regulations, etc. They came up with initial public offerings and they tried to fix such a price for that uh, offering that it was looking as a very good company. It has a bright prospect. Thereby, what was happening? They were trying to falsely increase the IPO price. And once the IPO were issued and the money is received from the investor, this company simply vanished. Another one is price manipulation. Yes, many a times companies also try to hike the prices of their equity share in anticipation that it will create a false sense of hope in the minds of the investor. Hope as well as uh, desire to purchase the equity shares. The companies who were not doing well, they tried to manipulate with the prices because higher prices of the equity share meant that the company is having good operations or better operations, having a good future prospect, and that price is falsely spread in the market, and investors were duped by that price. Another way of scam was through insider trading. Now, what is that insider trading first? Suppose I am having a relative in a certain company at a very high post. My relative is at a very high post. The company is going, suppose, for any kind of uh, expansion plan, diversion plan, etc., which will increase or enhance its capability so that the returns of the company will increase in the future. Now, this proposal of the company, before it comes to the general public, what happens? It passes on or trickles or percolates to me through my relative who is at a high post in the company. So according to the information that I get, I immediately know that the particular company's security will be having a very high price in the future. So if I purchase today, suppose at rupees 100, maybe after 6 months, after the plans of the company are made public, the company's share price may rise to suppose 300 rupees. So I can purchase today at a very low price and hold it till the announcement is done, thereby driving the share prices upwards. And what will happen? I'll sell up the securities and get abnormal profits out of the securities. So here, how could I gain or get profit, abnormal profit from the marketplace? The answer is yes, I had a certain information. Since one of my colleagues or associates or my relative was inside person of the company, that means working for the company. So the insider information that has been received by me, I will utilize it in a illegal way of duping the investors. So these are some of the market scams that were coming up during the 1990s. So what was happening? The general investors, they were facing lots of difficulty because they could not know whether the price changes or the price volatility is actually according to the demand and supply forces or it has been due to anything that is false. So, if it is according to demand and supply, investors feel that yes, they are subject to the fair playground, level playground. But if it is nothing fair and free, a level playground, investors will have their grievances. Now, a mechanism is needed to redress the grievances of the investors. Not only that, investors are to be educated. As of now, we see many advertisements coming up in electronic media, in your social media, print media also, where authorities like RBI, Government of India, SEBI, they try to educate the investors. So here we say both SEBI, Securities and Exchange Board of India, and stock exchanges have instituted mechanism for education and investor protection. So they are trying their level best to educate the innocent investor. That means have certain basic idea regarding where you are investing and what is the status of your investment avenue. As well as they try to protect the interest of the investors so that their hard earned money is not taken in an unfair way away by certain companies or certain agencies. When we are talking of investor protection, what is the role of Securities and Exchange Board of India, that is SEBI. SEBI was established for protecting investors' interest and create a global benchmark. Investors' interest is always to look for a level playground where they can compete with each other with only the controlling factors as demand and supply. No other important factor will be coming into the market price and driving the share prices upwards or downwards in an unfair way. So, in order to protect this investor interest, SEBI was primarily established. Now, in Indian economy, we have seen it is one of the most or is becoming one of the most technologically advanced system working, which is comparable with many developed nations also. So we are trying to create such a benchmark which will be globally accepted for the securities market or the equity market. Here, the more focus is on investor education. So SEBI, through various kind of activities, as we shall go on, we shall see, various activities tries to educate the general investors. Another role of SEBI is to enforce redressal of grievances. So any grievances by the investor will be taken up seriously by SEBI, and SEBI tries to address the problem and solve the grievance of the investor. So something called as IEPF, Investor Education and Protection Fund, has been created by SEBI. So this has evolved for compensating investors from the penalties received. So what happens here? Now SEBI, if it finds the company as guilty, then it levies penalties on them. The penalty money or the penalty amount that has been received, they are kept in IEPF, Investor Education and Protection Fund. And from that, the investors who have been cheated, who have been taken for a ride, and as a consequence, they are suffering losses. So, in order to compensate them, it will be done out of this particular IEPF fund. So, IEPF, the Investor Education and Protection Fund, what it is, how the amounts are coming to the fund, who is managing it, what is the purpose behind it, let us check. The Investor Education and Protection Fund has been established under Section 205C of the Companies Act 1956 by way of Companies Amendment Act 1999. So, the Education and Protection Fund for Investor is to be or has been set up. Why they are set up? Now, immediately we can say to sensitize the investor. Sensitizing means to increase the investor's awareness, and after that also, if any investor is falling or his or her investment is falling into wrong investment avenue, then how it can be recovered or protected. So the objective of IEPF is to promote the awareness of the investor and protect the interest of the investors. Now, what are the abouts credited to the fund? Where from the fund gets the monetary support? One is unpaid dividends. So, first of all, when we are talking of dividends, what it is? Now, in a company, at the end of the financial year, the final accounts are made. Or, in other words, we can say the process of preparing the balance sheet as well as before that the profit loss account has to be done mandatorily. Now, after we get the operational profit, suppose it is 100 rupees. So, first uh, we try to pay the interest amount, the taxes amount out of the operational profit, and whatever is left belongs to the equity shareholders. Now, the board of management of the company may decide, suppose this year 100 crores of rupees is the profit left for the equity shareholders. How it shall be distributed? We can say here that the board of management decides what percentage of the held back amount will be given as dividends. It can be 100%, it can be 0% also. Now, suppose say that 50% will be returned back. That means the company's accruals of the profit belonging to the equity shareholder, they are held back by the company. Remaining portion out of 100 crores that is left for equity shareholder, 50 crores are kept back by the company. It is investors' money, we know, but it is kept aside so that the company need not go for funding agencies in the future plans. It can utilize this money as investment. Remaining portion will be paid as dividends in a equitable manner to all the equity shareholders of the company. Now, company has to pay 50% of the total profit as dividend. Suppose the company pays only 46% of the 100 crore rupees as the dividend. What about the remaining 4%? The remaining 4% is the unpaid dividends. We, as a company, sometimes we may not have paid dividends to all the equity shareholders due to certain drawbacks. So, these unpaid dividends should be credited to the IEPF. Second is when the company goes for the initial public offering or IPO, people, instead of paying the equity shares total price, they pay in parts. The first or the basic part that is paid by the uh, investors is suppose we say the amount is divided as 10 rupees per equity share the company has to receive, 2 rupees will be application, 8 rupees will be at the time of the calls. So this 2 rupees application money till it is refunded back to the investors who have not been allotted the equity shares will be kept in IEPF funds. That means application money to be refunded to those investors whose application does not get through or gets the equity share. Similarly, mature deposits and debentures with the company. We know that the deposits and debentures of a company, there the return is guaranteed. Even if it is small or smaller than equity shares, but this matured deposits and debentures, we can say that they will be kept in IEPF due to the reason that sometimes there are no claimants. Sometimes the person who has done the thing has died. So this kind of problems, whenever is there, matured deposits and debentures will be kept with the company. Apart from that, SEBI has said any grant or donations received from, we can say, what kind of sources? From legitimate sources. All kind of grants and donations. Legitimate sources it can be. It can be foreign collaboration, that means a foreign government agency will be coming to fund your research. That way also we can do. Grants and donation received. Then finally, interest or income received from the fund. We say na, the fund that we have in our hands will be keeping it in banks. Now those banks will certainly be calculating the interest on the fund under investor education and protection. So if it is a debt instrument, we are talking of interest. If it is a equity share, then we call it as income received from the fund. So the fund, whatever interest or income is generated by utilizing the fund from a particular person, particular organization, they will become a part according to the regulations. Now, who are the committee members? That means who will run the investor education and protection fund. The committee has been created by the central government in consultation with the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. So here we try to say yes. The IEPF committee has to consult with many central authorities for the maintenance or running of the club, running of the school, etc. Now, what are the basic functions of IEPF as understood by everybody? First is education programs through media. Do all of us have education programs in our media? The answer is yes. Nowadays you are having all kind of connectivity and you are trying to generate various information, and using that information we try to consult with the CAG of India also. Then finally we try to see where from the funds will be coming. So the committee is created by central government in consultation with the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, the highest authority of maintaining the accounts, CAG. So central government can create the committee. What are the functions mainly? The functions include education programs through media. Media means through print media. You can have the electronic media. You can have the social platforms, etc. etc. Seminars and conferences. So, whenever seminars and conferences are held by various institutes, educational institutes, or companies also, and the main aim is IEPF, for that you have to conduct educational program. Second is, as we saw, conferences. Lot of researchers, academicians, industrialists, etc., will be gathering in conferences. So the ideas will be exchanged. One can know from the other the better things the other person has done, etc. Proposals for registration of organizations engaged in investor education and protection. So the organization which are involved in the investor education and protection, they are identified or proposals from them come to leaders, either local leaders or the state leaders or the chief minister. Usually, without registration, it is very difficult to get any kind of funding. So, here SEBI tries to register the organization who work for investor education and protection. Also, we have equity analysis firms, researchers in finance, researchers in stock market who carry out various kinds of research activities in the IEP, the Investor Education and Protection. Another function is proposal for setting up institutional arrangements or infrastructure for taking up programs. Government is always saying, you give the idea, we'll provide you with basic support in the form of land, infrastructure, etc., etc., so that you can have a farm of your own. So, if you can set up an institutional arrangement or infrastructure for Gita College, we can say that yes, uh, this will help to sensitize the investors. Investor Protection and Education Fund, IPEF. The IPEF has been created by SEBI. when we are talking of IEPF, Investor Education and Protection Fund, that was done by the central government primarily. But IPEF, Investor Protection and Education Fund, has been created by SEBI by issuing the Securities and Exchange Board of India IEPF Regulations 2009. That means the Board of Governors, we cannot change them every time. So we have to go by the rules or the regulation of SEBI IPEF 2009. Now, this particular fund, where from it will get its capital? Now, let us see. First is contribution made by the board. Board here stands for Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI. SEBI, out of its profits, sometimes hands over the amounts for protection of everybody. Grants and donations by approved authorities. We have seen, if you are doing certain mass work like investor protection and education, then you are talking of a gigantic task. So here, on the way, when people have started coming here, they would definitely would have got many kind of grants and donations from either the general public or the jamindars etc. of that particular area. So grants and donations by approved authorities, they only can provide the fund. Another one is security deposits held by exchanges in case of derecognition. Suppose what happens, a particular company X which has been listed in a particular stock exchange. Now, due to some fraudulent practice, the X company has been interrogated and kept in the law table. He may either go to the punishment cell or may also can go with some kind of cautions. So whatever are the derecognition thing that we are having, or it is held by exchanges, the securities deposits, that has to be credited to the fund. Now the fund's money, whatever is there, is usually invested, and the invested, if it is in debt securities etc., we get interest. If it is equity shares or equity platforms, we get incomes. So interest or incomes from the fund. Then finally, any other amount as specified by the board. Now, how we utilize the IPEF, the Investor Protection and Education Fund? Now, through educational activities, through awareness programs in media. Next, funding education and awareness activity, aiding investors association, refund of deposits, salary allowances, expenses of ombudsman. Ombudsman, we shall try to understand as we go to that point. Other proposals are specified by the board. Educational activities. IPEF, what it does, it conducts various educational activities like going to general public, going to places like fairs, melas, or public gathering, etc. And they try to speak about the investor protection and education. Similarly, you can have educational activities in form of seminars, conferences, awareness among senior or over graduate level students who are nearing their job career. That means they are going to start the job career as early as possible. Awareness programs in media. Media can be newspaper, it can be your print newspaper is the print media. You can also have electronic medias. You can have displays, advertisements, etc. Apart from that, you can go for uh, social platform or social medias to utilize it for investor protection and education fund. For that, whatever is the amount spent will be given from the IPEF. Investors Association who are working for the protection and education of investors sometimes may not have that much money to get their association registered. So the IPEF comes forward for aiding the investors association. That means to get itself registered, the activities that will be undertaken, etc. Refund of deposits. Any deposit which has been done, for that refund we utilize IPEF funds. Now the persons working as ombudsmen, that means those who listen to the customer, etc., their salary, allowances, expenses shall be borne or met out of this particular IPEF. And the funds can also be utilized if the proposals are in tune with the board's specified uh, proposals. That means if board is permitting, then only you can go for such kind of proposals. Now, who are there in the advisory committee? There is executive director of the board, the SEBI's executive director is a part of advisory committee of this investor protection and education fund, two other officials of the SEBI, and five other expert members from outside. So in total, 8 members form the advisory committee for investor protection and education fund. Their term is usually for 2 years, which may be extended by another 2 years. Now, suppose out of the above, if any vacancy is created, it shall be filled up by the SEBI. And SEBI has the full authority or right to dissolve the committee at any point of time. So SEBI has the authority to dissolve the committee. If the committee is dysfunctional or is not working properly or is doing, you can say, illegal activities, etc., utilizing the funds money. Now, Investor Protection Fund. SEBI on May 30th, 2023 issued guidelines for Investor Protection Fund which came into effect on June 29th, 2023. Now, how this IPF, the Investor Protection Fund, what is its constitution and what is its management? All exchanges and depositories should establish an investor protection fund respectively. That means each exchange or depository should have their own investor protection fund. Now this consists of the IPF consists of 5 trustees, 3 public interest directors, 1 member from investor association, and the chief regulatory officer. These are the 5 who will form the trust, and the tenure is 5 years maximum. The place for this particular IPF or the Investor Protection Fund to work, that is the secretariat, will be provided by the exchanges and depositories. And the funds of Investor Protection Fund is not to be clubbed together with the funds of stock exchange or the depository. So funds of IPF is segregated and kept independent. Now, where from the contribution to IPF comes? Now, if it is the stock exchanges, the IPF of stock exchanges, the fund comes from 1% of listing fees received. The companies who are listing in the particular stock exchange, the fees that has been received, 1% will be contributed to the IPF, Investor Protection Fund. The total interest earned from security deposit by issuer company. So issuer company, whatever is the security deposit they are keeping, the interest earned out of that will be taken to IPF. If trading members are found guilty and are penalized, then the penalty collected from them will be taken to IPF. Companies, if they do not comply with the listing requirements, any penalty in the form of monetary penalties will be taken to Investor Protection Fund. Similar is the case of trading members. If they default in transactions, then whatever is the penalty collected, they will be taken to the Investor Protection Fund. Apart from all this, any other contribution specified by SEBI. Now this IPF or Investor Protection Fund of Depository, where from the money comes. So contribution of depositories to IPF usually comes from 5% of the profits from operations annually. Whatever is the total profit of the depository annually, 5% will be given to IPF. Any penalty or fines that are collected from the depository participants in monetary form will be given or kept aside and taken to IPF. Now the amount that is held in the IPF, Investor Protection Fund, any interest or income arising out of their investment will also be taken into IPF. Apart from that, any other contribution as has been suggested by the SEBI, Security Exchange Board of India. Now, how these IPF funds are utilized? What are the general guidelines for utilization of IPF? In instruments such as central government securities, fixed deposits in scheduled banks, and other avenues as approved by governing body of stock exchanges and depositories. So, apart from that, the balance available and the utilization should be reported to SEBI at the end of each month. Every month there will be a report prepared regarding what is the available balance and how the remaining amount has been utilized. It should be sent by the stock exchange or depository to SEBI. Investors Services Fund. 20% of the listing funds is kept aside for investor services, and this is supervised by regulatory oversight committee. And these funds shall be utilized for specified purposes such as investor education, awareness, research programs, seminars, conferences, etc. Now, investors' complaints and SEBI. Now, who can SEBI penalize or make responsible for any kind of unfair practices? Now, they are listed companies, the stock brokers or the registered trading members, stock exchanges, depositories and participants, the registrars, bankers, underwriters, etc., mutual funds and portfolio managers, the credit rating issues, custodian of securities, and KYC registration agencies. Now, investors' complaint which are not considered by SEBI are incomplete if they are not complete in all respect. Suggestions any given, unsatisfied with trading price of shares that cannot be taken as complaint, non-listing of shares of private offer, and SEBI does not handle such kind of complaints as against unlisted liquidated companies, or if the complaint is sub judice, that means in the laws. Other regulatory bodies are coming into the picture like RBI, IRDA, etc. So investors usually have their grievance due to delay in payment, insider trading, trading members' activities, and disputes should be resoluted through arbitration. As we find, the Indian capital market is becoming more and more a level playground. For that, SEBI is very proactive and is taking or acting as the watchdog at every step. So, in order to become a world class economy as well as world class stock exchange, SEBI is putting forward all kind of mechanisms to have it. With this, we end our session. Thank you.